Call the meeting to order. Clerk Kalanga, please call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen,
Present.
Mayor Brown,
Present.
Councilmember Sweet, Councilmember Tucson,
Present.
Councilmember D Simmons,
Present.
Councilmember J Simmons,
Present.
Councilmember King.
Present.
The 6 present, there is a quorum.
Someone make a motion to excuse Councilmember Sweet.
I move to excuse Councilmember Sweet. Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Please stand as you're able for a moment of silence. Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. I'll entertain a motion for agenda approval. So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Are there any additions or updates to the agenda?
I just had a couple of questions about the summer tax bill pieces. So I'd like to move that out of the consent agenda.
I second that.
Okay, so we'll move that to letter E. Under resolutions. Any other changes? All right, seeing none, all in favor with the agenda as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. All right, well, so before we go into our regularly scheduled meeting, we have a work session to discuss the potential changes to chapter 7. So I'll hand it over to the city manager and Christopher.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. We have been discussing chapter 7 for some time. And as a short-term solution, we have passed moratoriums, several of them to bring us here to this point so that we can discuss it. And basically, council asked for maps showing the current location of our dispensaries and I guess just be able to see where the zoning is and how far apart they are to see if that was something maybe we wanted to look into changing the buffers or either continuing as is. So today we're here to discuss that to see if what the desire of council is, if it's to put a limit, which we have done in the past. We've put a limit on the number of dispensaries we would allow. When that does happen, it triggers the need for a rubrics in order for us to determine who the license goes to, or we can let it happen by zoning. And so in speaking with Christopher about the number of dispensaries that would be allowed if we were to continue with zoning, I believe he did say about approximately 6, but he will go ahead and update you more on that. So Christopher?
Yeah, good afternoon, Mayor, City Council. Good to be with you. I'm glad we can dig into this topic. I know we've done a few moratoriums. We really want to get to the bottom of policy. And there's been an open question for some time about how many potential new sites a retail marijuana operator could open. The maps here, I'll give you the exact page number. I think on page 14, that's perhaps the best map to look at. You can see out on Washtenaw, there's potential for one. Up near the Peninsula Apartments, another. On Huron River Drive, around Forest. Another set of potential properties further down East Michigan, or West Michigan. You could see potentially an operator. And then down here on the south side, there's also the potential. Then rounding off on East Michigan, there are two circles, so depending on where one may open, that could create a buffer. And so that's sort of where the number is either potentially 6 or 7. Say one opened further south on E-course, while one opened further west on East Michigan Ave, you could potentially see 2 retail operators. The buffers exist in such a way that it would allow that. And so a maximum of 7, more than likely 6, maximum potential new retail operations. These maps do not account for micro businesses. So we have 1 micro business operating. And I think that is Planet Jane. So I believe there are 11 now operating, with the most recent being Ipsy Worst. That's in addition to one that I sent you received by text. So our website is current and updated with those that are operating. Right now, we're just waiting on 915 West Michigan Ave, and they announced they'll be opening towards the end of the month. And then the one that is really most uncertain is out on East Michigan Ave, the old Clucks and the Sky Mint that had an appeal. So 2 and 4 West Forest are moving forward. So of the appeals, only 1 looks like they may not open. The rest have a very clear plan and timeline to open. Now, this is only one option, zoning. If we decide to stick with zoning, I would recommend that we adopt the buffers that we have here for retail for micro businesses. Otherwise, if you don't apply any buffers, you could see as many micro businesses choose to apply without any buffers currently in place for micro businesses. So that remains a pretty big loophole in the moratorium currently, where you could see potentially many more essentially retailers operating than you intend without amending the buffers. The other option here is a cap. City Manager McMullen mentioned that when you institute a cap, there is a requirement for a rubric. The rubric has been challenging in the past, developing objective standards and making those decisions. So a zoning process is perhaps the most objective way to do it. First come, first serve within the eligible parcels that are not buffered out. But with that comes the potential for, or almost the inevitability of, more retail operations. So if you're comfortable with that, I would recommend sticking with the buffers, amending to create a buffer for micro businesses. If you're like the Planning Commission several months ago when we had our work session, feeling like perhaps, we have too many, or that you want to limit any further, a cap would be more appropriate. But then that comes with the challenge of creating a rubric that can be defensible and uphold legal challenge. So those are 2 of the broad ways that we're looking at regulating marijuana in the city, and specifically retail operations. There's also a list of those parcels where they would be currently eligible within the given buffers provided on page 15.
Thank you. Ready for questions?
Yeah.
All right, I'll start. Anybody? Mayor Pro Tem.
My understanding is the East Michigan Flux Skymint has declared bankruptcy, so that's not going to happen.
More than likely not.
What are the conditions that it would happen if they found?
Under a transfer of ownership, perhaps. I would defer to the city clerk on a transfer and how that would fit in.
So you can't, a facility owner can't transfer a permit. They would have to apply as a new facility.
In order to transfer it, they would have to do all the work that they had proposed in the first permit.
That's just a transfer location. You can't transfer ownership of a permit.
Okay, cool. So that one's essentially out.
Although it leaves, an area that could be potentially a retail operation. that buffer opens up. So,
And
But,
so, oh,
but as is written now, there's 10 permits. And so they wouldn't be able to do that because there's already,
that's not how it's written currently.
Yeah.
So we currently regulate by zoning.
Okay. Councilmember, you said you have a question?
yeah, just a couple of quick questions. So I guess, so that's one clarity. So what we have in our packet is a proposed change from what we currently have.
Correct. Instituting caps.
Okay.
The-
And then what we see here that has the buffers with available parcels map. That includes the businesses that are either already operating or that have gone through the appeals process.
Correct.
But one of them is maybe defunct at this point. But that doesn't change that could then be filled again, right, based on our buffers. Can you just say a little bit about, just to share about what micro business, like what that is, like how that's different, and what, when you say that you think we should have buffers for that, what that looks like? Because I guess what we currently have, because what we have here is suggesting a cap of only one micro business. So what would the buffers lend to based on what a micro business is?
So I would adopt buffers if it depends on what you want, right? If you want to have more facilities, you can be less restrictive in applying buffers. If you want less facilities, you should be more restrictive, right? So it's a trade-off. The more restrictive option would be adopting the buffers for retails between micro businesses. So it's a buffer that applies to both of them. So that micro businesses only have a shot at the eligible parcels that current retail or prospective retail operators have. So you would just adopt micro business buffers the same as shown on the map currently.
And so again, what is a micro, like what is that difference? And
Originally, there were restrictions on the supply chain for micro businesses. And my understanding is that the state has since amended those rules to allow for them to operate in almost the same way as a retail operation.
Mhm.
So there's very little difference currently. As they were designed, it was meant to limit the inventory, the sourcing of that inventory, so that they were smaller operations. And that's not currently how they're regulated at the state level. And so they have very little discernible difference from my understanding between a retail operation.
Kalanga had something.
If I could add something to that, a micro business, the way it was originally designed, would have to grow their own product that they would sell. With the change in the legislation, they now have the opportunity to not only just sell what they have grown, but to purchase from outside cultivators.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
what was the rationale of not putting buffers on micro businesses in the first place? Did that come from planning commission? Did that come from, where did that come from? Because I know all this went through the planning commission at some point. And they actually altered those.
I can't explain why micro businesses were exempted from a buffer. That's sort of a policy decision. I don't know what the rationale was at the time. Maybe we wanted to encourage smaller operations under those previous rules. That's really a policy decision, not a staff recommendation from the time.
Okay, and then about the buffers, the way so the way they are these kind of predetermined based on, like whatever the buffer range is or the kind of buffer it is, like those are predetermined already?
No, we adopt those buffers. And so when the maps were originally adopted, they were done so in a way to be more restrictive, to create fewer opportunities for new retail locations. The problem that we really ran into and why a cap is the only way to prevent new facilities, if that's what you choose to do, is because for retail, you cap for both, right? Is because any changes to the buffers would create legal nonconformities that would cause problems for existing facilities at the state level.
Mhm.
So we've really run out of options in terms of increasing the buffer to eliminate potential new sites.
Mhm.
So in terms of the policy question, if you want fewer facilities, a cap is the way to go, but it comes with a rubric. If you want more facilities within reason, up to 6, the buffers would suit that purpose, and you can amend or add the micro business buffers as you so choose.
And so if, let's say we wanted the cap and we had to do this rubric again, has there been like more support from the state or like best practice around what those rubrics should look like? Or is everybody still just creating their own?
Andrew.
Everyone is still creating their own rubrics. There's no standard rubric that the state has suggested.
Thank you. Further questions?
Lots.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
chair recognized.
I do. I
Thank you.
recognize that pro tem.
The $100 fee in section 7.4.1. There's a $100 fee that's added there, and it's added later on as well. Is that, I know that we're limited on what fees we can levy, but is that really the cost of a day late? I mean, if we're charging $100 for every day they're late, I assume that's just a deterrent and not really. So how does that fly with the philosophy that we can only charge fees to cover our labor costs to do these things?
That's not a fee. That is a fine for a late application.
So is that worded in the? All right.
The $5,000 application fee is not listed anywhere in the in chapter 7. That's through the fee schedule.
$100 late fine.
One thing I want to point out about how the ordinance to introduce caps is written, that was some time ago. So it actually rolls back the cap so that we wouldn't have potentially new facilities needing to go through a rubric for some time until many dropped off our current permitted facilities. So that's an arbitrary number. You can change that as you wish. Planning Commission did recommend that number. That's only their opinion on the number of facilities, though.
And I also, excuse me, would like to add that we also had social equity permits as well as regular.
Mhm.
And previously, we only had one rubric. So if we want to continue, if we want to say that if a social equity permit becomes vacant, do we refill it with, another social equity applicant? Or do we want to just strike that? I would say altogether. That's a matter of policy, but I think that's something worth talking about because all 10 of them weren't, at the time, just regular permits. 7 of them were, and 3 came through social equity. So, and that's kind of what made it difficult a little bit because they don't think they should have the same standards.
7 or 6, because we had 7 that we had available for the medical places that we assumed were going to apply for
Retail.
retail. And then we had 3 spots in the original ordinance. And then we wound up with 6 that came in under social equity.
Yeah, because there was one that was in the pipe, I think. Wasn't that right, Andrew? At the time?
We had the 7 medical, which when chapter 8 was originally written, those were designated, the 7
Medical.
medical were designated to receive recreational, plus there was the 3 social equity, Those were awarded, and then 3 additional were awarded on appeal in 2021.
Right. There's something to think about, you know.
Right, because I looked up the, the state still designates social equity applications and has the very relaxed criteria for what it had been, but they still have both the business and the individual requirements, but that's. Let's leave it there. Yeah, I think it's worth discussing because, there are some things that were lined out that I thought were reasonable things to expect for the social equity. So in here, there's when you get to the part where it's talking about the number of businesses and that the zoning is in chapter 122, except for the retail facilities. And they have 3 medical permits. So if all 7 of the medicals got into the adult use retail, then why do we still have 3 medical permits?
They have both medical licenses and recreational
Gotcha. So only 3 out of the 7
maintain their.
maintain the split. Got it. Thank you.
Okay, clarifying question. I think, I want to say, Christopher, you said this. So if we were to move to the cap, that number was presented to us from Planning Commission. So we could increase or even decrease that number if we wanted to. And also, we wouldn't actually be going through this application, this rubric process until someone's permit, like they don't renew it or they drop off or something happens, or
Perhaps never. I mean, probably for a long time. Depending on how many operators can continue to meet their obligations and how the market may support the current number that are permitted. I find it highly unlikely that we'll be in a position where we'll have to permit new facilities for some time if they were adopted, a cap was adopted at that number.
Yeah, so this is a question for council. I'm wondering, I guess I'm wondering like what would be the reasons or arguments for doing a cap, and then there might be some other things kind of flowing from that in terms of what would be outside of kind of choosing an arbitrary number, how would the cap be so determined, et cetera. But I'm interested in kind of what the reasons or arguments might be for a cap.
so I'm just gonna be honest, I don't feel strongly about either one personally at this point, but I do know that in previous conversations and previous meetings, even our joint meeting with the Planning Commission, the members at that time felt like there was overabundance of marijuana facilities in Ypsilanti. And one of the things that sticks in my brain from that meeting was, we don't want to become the weed city. And there was like some consensus around a few people on the Planning Commission, right? And then others who were kind of like, whatever, it brings in revenue, it does these different things. And so I think I was just into exploring like what our options are and what would make most sense for us, because I know that there are very opposite views in our community about how we engage in the marijuana community. So I think a lot of it is some stigma stuff, honestly. Some of it is there are really important things that have come up around proximity to schools and and in particular neighborhoods being adjacent to liquor stores. And we already have on the south side an abundance of liquor stores, and then adding additional, dispensaries there. There were concerns in that area, having dispensaries next door to churches, even with permission, that was a thing. So there's just been a lot of feelings, I would say, about what Ypsi looks like in terms of this business.
On a per capita basis, we are on the higher end, not one of the highest, but on the higher end. And the other prevailing attitude at planning commission, looking back at the cases, the huge preponderance of cases were marijuana. Site plans and special use applications. So it seemed like every time they met,
They were talking about.
they were talking about permitting more marijuana facilities.
That was to be expected.
Right.
I don't see why that was a complaint at all. This is like, this is a business. It has to go through that process. You know, if you're tired of doing it, then, you know, I don't know what to tell you.
This is where the issue came up and the idea, right? I mean, they even got to the point where they wondered aloud whether, despite if something meets all the requirements, that they have any ability to have an opinion about the appropriate number. And that was sort of when we were like looking for a joint meeting.
Mr. Barr and then Councilmember Jay Simmons had your hand up.
The idea of limiting businesses has been around for a while. Many years ago, so there's a famous case in Detroit that had to do with adult businesses. And Detroit wanted to limit adult businesses. So it went to court, and the upshot was that the court said there's a rationale if you have zoning ordinances with distance requirements, because the public safety and welfare and morals allow cities to protect zoning for residential areas, for schools, for churches, and things like that. And so there became the idea that you can regulate these businesses by having these distances. And the question was whether the proper distances, and that will do a lot of litigation, and 1,000 feet seems to be appropriate in most cases. Then if you have caps, you can limit the number kind of legally by zoning, by having these distance requirements. Then if you have a particular prejudice or feeling against one particular type of business, it is possible to cap the number in the city, because we're a small city and so on. But the problem becomes if you have a cap, then who qualifies? And what happened in Ypsilanti, we started with the idea of, well, people that are going to apply to be first come, first served. And that worked out for a little while, and then the state changed the rules for a while, and we had social equity permits and more. And so with a cap, if you say you're going to have X number of businesses, and 2 people apply for the same thing, how do you determine who's going to get it? And so that's saying you have to have kind of a rational reason for giving it to one person and not. And that's a real difficult thing. All right. So generally, the legal community has favored the zoning way to regulate. And with the caps, there are some, I've read that San Francisco in some areas has an overabundance of marijuana shops in particular areas. Overabundance is a judgment value. And in Ypsilanti, I remember the Hope for marijuana was by 81% in favor of it. So these are difficult policy issues. But the thing that I'd be trying to, that I would request is to come up with a plan that's going to limit the time that we have to go to court. And limit the time that we're going to have to make judgments.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. I'm sorry, really quick. Clerk, is the, oh, it is showing up. Okay, so then I think folks online couldn't hear you, Mr. Barr. If you could speak into the mic. Okay,
Sorry.
thank you, it's okay. Councilmember Jason.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my judgment, I guess I'm less inclined to get excited about more, marijuana businesses. I mean, I'm not saying there hasn't been some good, but I also do have concerns in trying to figure out how to balance that. I mean, we definitely heard from the schools with their concerns and whatnot. But I agree. I think with Mr. Barr, what he was saying, essentially, probably the best way to do that might be through zoning. But we have to be mindful, I guess, because we don't want to have non-conforming, businesses if we make changes. I don't know. So.
I also think it's really interesting because I was here last week meeting with high school students, and we were they asked questions about, the facilities in the city, and actually more of their concern and the things that they spoke of that they feel is causing harm was actually not marijuana and more of the vape, like the nicotine vape. That's something they want us to look at. They literally have emailed me this, over the last week saying, we want to keep talking to you all about this. We want to come back because they're more concerned about the facilities that produce and provide that than marijuana in the city. It's impacting them negatively from their mouths, you know, to my ears. So I think it's interesting, just, you know, perspective is everything, right? So that was just something that came from the talk, but I saw two hands. Councilmember King.
So, to Desiree's question, I am more so leaning towards the caps for some of the same reasons that Mayor Brown stated. The residents that I have spoke to stated that it is an overabundance in the communities and how close they are to a lot of the low-income housing developments. And that is some of their issues. So the residents that I have spoke with, they have strongly been against having more marijuana facilities.
Oh, yeah. Councilmember.
Yeah, thank you for that. I was just gonna say, because I'm trying to, you know, I'll name, I have a deficiency, y'all, you know, maps aren't my thing. I'm saying here like which direction is what. So I'm trying to overlay and figure out where all these dots are with looking at something that tells me words. Okay. So just to say a couple of things. One is, so for me, for Ward 3, this has not raised as an issue that folks kind of bring to me or have expressed strong feelings on outside of, you know, with the popular vote of what happened. And I know I went through that before. And then recognizing that a lot of the current businesses are within Ward 3, and even based on what I see in terms of the possibilities. And so Christopher, maybe you can help as I'm looking at these bright greens. The majority of them still seem like they're still within kind of Ward 3 or outside of the South Side. And so I just want to name that, which is that most of them currently are not in that area. And most of the possibilities of what could come would not be in that area, based on what I'm looking at. So, so I just want to say that. So again, I think kind of based on location, and where a lot of them are, they are, you know, kind of, I don't want to say equally spread across the city, but then kind of populated in some different spaces. So from that perspective, you know, I'm not sure that it kind of raises to the level of kind of prohibiting. The other thing I want to say is just that, you know, so for the different businesses, I always wonder, you know, when we start to put forward, okay, here's where we are, we cap and then change, how much we then are privileging current businesses, and whether, you know, that's really something that the city wants to be in the business of doing, and how we would decide or want to kind of uphold that. And then I also think about, you know, sizing about the revenue, but I also think, again, I think kind of within the way that we talk about markets in a lot of space, I feel that these will also figure it themselves out. I personally have actually, I always wonder about like, just do people even go to these spaces and know what's going on in them? So I've been working my way through the different businesses, the different dispensaries. And they're not all the same so far. And so I think that that's interesting just to note, which means that there will be enough variety for people to pick and choose or decide, oh, this is my favorite or not. And some of them won't last. Like they just won't, I mean, whatever, maybe they will because everything will be in Ypsi and that's the only reason people will come here. I mean, I don't think that's the only reason people will come here. We have such a variety of businesses that draw folks to Ypsilanti. We're also like the vintage store stop. We're also like, and those went through a growth. And I remember talking to some of those business owners at that time being like, oh, well, what? And they're like, oh, well, that just means more people come here to go to all of them, could come to all of us, right? So just to say that, I don't know that we like, as a community, we're so diverse and vibrant that there's not one reason why people come here. And also that I think that the businesses themselves, you know, they, just like anything else, has to come up with a market plan, and, you know, and then they will either succeed or not succeed based on that. And part of that includes market research too. I think some of the surrounding municipalities are also starting to open up in different ways as well. Like I know Ipsy Township, which has been resistant to this point, but they are opening up a space. And so, you know, there's going to be some of those things that also might change the situation here in the city as well, in terms of whether everyone's going to try to crowd into this space or go into other places.
Further discussion from council?
Can you expand on the privileging the current businesses?
Well, because if we are putting a cap, so the way it says now is that we currently have 13 and it would go down to 10. And then, so then new businesses wouldn't be opening until it went underneath that amount, right? And so it would take probably a pretty high threshold for a new business to be able to kind of open in a spot or a space. And then also, for instance, based on the different kinds of businesses, so based on what we have, we only have one consumption site that has already been approved, right? And so that means that with no new possibilities for businesses, there'd be no other possibilities for another consumption site. So we would actually only be privileging that one site to currently be open without anybody else being able to enter into that space. And so it would probably take a really high threshold for there to be any competition for public consumption.
One other note, to that point, you know, one of the things we've heard from these social equity applicants is that there were many more requirements placed on those that receive social equity permits, particularly that don't exist for micro businesses, or say the moratorium ended tomorrow and you wanted to open up a new retail facility, you wouldn't be required to do a rooftop garden, or really the burden of so many of the requirements that or the social equity applicants were held to. So in that way, they had a much, you know, heavier lift, higher burden. And so sort of a counter to that idea.
Is it possible to require that for everybody else across the board?
I mean, Mr. Barr or Andrew, I don't know about that one.
Put it in the ordinance.
Mr. Barr.
You have to remember, anytime that you pass an ordinance or a law, you're generally favoring one thing and not another. That goes with the business.
The one designated consumption site is forced with guys three?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Andrew, is that not correct?
It's Stickies. There was another Indica rather. There was another one that opened up, but designated consumption sites are they're not lasting in the market. They close down pretty quickly.
I do believe 2 and 4 West Forest, whether they've applied for it or not, have the intent to do so.
Right. I just
Designated
read that last
consumption.
night. He said he intended to do it. So,
No application has been received from that.
right. They're not there yet. They're still trying to figure out the one opening.
It's a phased opening, from what I understand.
The designated consumption sites were excluded in the first ordinance with a cap of 0, right? And then when it moved to zoning, that's when those opened up, right?
Designated consumption sites have never had a cap. They've been unlimited.
I thought that was the only reason Jennifer Simmons voted for this in the first place, was because there was a cap on that. Wasn't that true?
Chapter 8.
Jennifer?
That was like so long ago.
I know, I don't know, I don't.
I've been trying to figure this out. It's like, okay, when did those come around? Because my understanding was that there weren't any designated consumption sites because Annie Somerville was pissed.
Yeah, I thought there
It-
were none. That's why I'm like, am I hearing that there's that, yeah, because, yeah.
I was just trying to clarify that because I remember that exchange and
Right.
that was the price of getting it passed was no designated consumption site.
I don't have certainty about that historic information.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
I just want to say that I think designated consumption sites are a reasonable thing to have, for all the reasons that Annie stated at the time. Renters have no place to go. If they're a smoke-free building, they don't have, they have to go out of the city, right? Because they can't do it in a public place. All those arguments are still there.
When this was passed, designated consumption sites did not have a maximum.
All right.
So I have a question about this, coming back to the social equity question. I was trying to wrap my brain. Because I feel like you were sharing that around what I was saying, and I was trying to kind of understand that as a counterpoint to what I have put forward. So I guess a question I have is, so for folks who currently have social equity licenses, because the question was, okay, as those change, are we basically confirming that we will always have 3 social equity like licenses, and they will continue in that way, but then those come with these additions. I guess a question I have is, so the benefit for them, I guess, what is the benefit? Because I thought that the social equity was supposed to be a way to support like local businesses or to support ownership of folks who have been harmed. So I feel like that should be then a positive designation.
It more often than not made the cost of opening much higher than it would currently be under the zoning.
That was a result of the rubric, not so much anything else. But the thing is, in midway, the state changed the requirements for fulfilling that social equity requirement, which basically meant, and correct me if I'm wrong, every medical business that was already open fulfilled the requirements for social
Yeah.
equity. So every
Yeah.
business that is now open in one way or another, just by virtue of being in the city of Ypsilanti, fulfills that requirement. What we also saw with that was the new businesses that came in for the social equity, a lot of them had outside partners with the local person as the face. And, we talked about that and trying to figure out ways to prevent that from happening. So that it wasn't, but there was little you could do about that.
And then, so I guess a question, would be, one, is anything we're talking about would be a remedy for that in terms of if we go, if it's by one, do folks have to keep that same social, like that same license, or could they revert back and then they would have fewer requirements?
They've tried and they can't without reapplying, and they can't reapply under the current moratorium.
So, yeah, but then what I'm saying is, so if, in terms of what we're considering now, there's a possible remedy if we were outside of the moratorium and we're by buffer, and so then they could still then reapply differently than what's possible now.
I'm going to defer to Andrew. I think he has something on that.
Moratorium was only on new facilities. If it's the same facility, essentially right now, all permits are operating the same. They turn in an application. There is no real difference between a social equity permit holder and a regular. They submit an application every year, and these are only for new businesses, and these are acting as previously permitted businesses. So they could submit whatever they want, just as long as that it's at the same location.
And so as it is now, the folks who had originally maybe gotten a license through social equity, because they have to reapply each year, that it doesn't like re-up those requirements necessarily, but they're still holding true to like their first contract.
Well, essentially, they're just submitting the exact same application.
A renewal. I think the question it would become a question if there was one that was designated as social equity and there was a vacancy. You know, how would we deal with that? Would we deal with that as a regular permit? Or would we, that's why I was saying we may have to have two separate rubrics if we want to keep that designation of having 3.
Mr. Barr?
The courts have made a distinction between applying for a license and having a license. And the distinction is that once you get a license, then you have a property interest in that license. And you need to use due process to take it away. So once they have the license, they have a property interest in it, and you have to have a reasonable, rational basis to take it away from them.
So I guess that's not my question is whether a person who currently has a social equity license, whether, because it's not that they're reapplying for a social equity license. Now they're just getting
A renewal.
a renewal license like everyone else. So is it that the upfront cost, the cost of what they had to open, except for one of them, right, hadn't yet opened because we heard an appeal who was supposed to be a social equity case? Right, that's the worst part, no?
So currently, when the social equity permit holders reapply, they have done so under zoning as the way to, the tool to limit.
Mhm.
But, so there is no need for an application, or I'm sorry, a metric for
Right.
issuing anything. So if they apply and meet the zoning requirements and meet all the requirements based on the application, they're awarded a permit.
Okay, so then when we were holding folks accountable, so I'm just thinking about there was the thing about the rooftop garden, I'm like, I think that's great, but I guess if people didn't want to do that, they could just be like, we just aren't doing it. And then, so it would just kind of be the same thing, right? So they're kind of either doing it or not doing what they had said based on whether they can or not, but we're not necessarily enforcing something there.
Because there's nothing to enforce.
Mhm.
So we don't have a metric because we don't need one any longer.
Okay.
So the idea that everybody's operating under a normal license, normal permit. No social equity designation to any of those businesses any longer after the first application. The idea that we would be holding any social equity applications, we don't have any to hold.
Every permit holder is handled the same way when we have the zoning requirement. And now if council determined to change policy and go back to the cap, then it would have to determine like the social equity, those that were awarded it. It's moot now. That doesn't matter. They have their permit and they're going to move forward with that. The state regulation on social equity, it really didn't hold any weight to what everyone thought it was going to be. So everyone is pretty much just has the same permit.
Do we
However,
have that mentioned in our ordinance though?
the ordinance, chapter 7, it's still in there. It still has a social equity component,
Right.
but there's no allocated social equity permits. It's
Oh.
all done by zoning.
So yeah, that's why I'm referring to it, because it is in our ordinance. So maybe that's something that, should not be there. If we're not, if we're not gonna operate with no social equity component. Correct.
Yeah, so the only designation of social equity is at the state level in terms of the discounts for license.
In the requirements originally when they were permitted, having the higher standards that they committed to.
Well, I mean, that there were higher standards, but it was just based off, we needed to have standards in order to award these permits. It
was
wouldn't have
our
mattered
standards.
had they been regular permits. They would have still been under the same rubric.
Right.
But that's what happened, a few years ago. So now we need to decide what we're going to do moving forward.
Correct.
Right. Further questions or discussion?
Yeah. So we talked about the clause that says at the time a permit categorized as retail becomes available, city council with assistance from staff will approve a tool to evaluate the application. So that is only necessary in the case that we have a cap.
If I could just interject, this is just the ordinance that staff designed based off of what the direction of council was at that time. This is only that. This does not have to be what we do. Staff just needs to know, do you want a cap or do you want to go forward with zoning?
This is what we were directed at that joint meeting to come up with something, right? Mhm.
Councilmember Simmons.
So this is a question, because I feel like the conversation, there's different questions probably, right? Depending on direction that we might go in. So maybe, I don't know if we can get a sense of, I'm trying to think of what would be that we would kind of try to put forward, whether it's to maintain our current ordinance around zoning, or whether we would be looking to make a change in some way from that. Because then if we're focusing on that one, then I think there might be questions or things that might be focused on language within that document versus the one that we have in our packet. Right?
Correct. Nothing can happen at this meeting other than
Yeah.
give us direction on what you want us to
back.
go back and create. But
Yeah.
then
It's
we have
not
to
a
have a
vote.
first reading and a second reading, and it
Uh-huh.
has to be noticed. And then, so council will have a lot of time to
Think
You
about
ask
what
those
words, or
questions.
Think about whatever.
Okay.
the current moratorium doesn't end until the 12th of December. So council has ample time to ask staff questions, given that we have a direction to go.
And then based on what we have now, so we would have to go through a first and second reading just to revert back to what we already have.
No, council has taken no action.
This is discussion. And for us.
If we do nothing and the moratorium sunsets, then we have what we have right now.
We have right now. We don't.
Yes. So in whatever, but if we decide to do something with that one, we have some time to decide that. Okay, thanks.
Mr. Barr, you had your hand up.
Yes, I think it's helpful to go back to see what is the basic question, what's the underlying issue? And the underlying issue is you have two choices. You can have unlimited numbers or you can have limited numbers. And if you have unlimited numbers, then you do away with all of the zoning and all of the caps and so on. If you want to have limited numbers, then you have to decide how you want to do it. And I think staff is of the opinion that it's best to do it by zoning for a number of different reasons. So I think these are maybe not easy decisions, but you have to decide at the present time, as far as marijuana establishments, are there too many, not enough? You want to limit them at all? And if so, how do you want to do it?
Thank you, Mr. Barr. I just want to clarify the unlimited. We don't actually have like unlimited
No.
within reason, right? Within
Well-
what's
6 or
available.
7.
Micro businesses, I mean,
Oh, wait, no, that
could actually be unlimited.
Yeah, we need to fix that.
Yeah.
But
At the very
Yeah.
least, I think that's
we need to fix that.
the simplest change that you could make.
Okay.
So the micro businesses can go in
Right now.
Any of them.
any zone.
Yeah.
They
Well,
can be,
no,
it
it's
can't be-
depending, depending on the zoning district, they're not permitted in residentially zoned districts, but commercially eligible districts by zoning.
Mhm.
There's no buffer around them, so they can prop up right next to one another.
Are we getting a lot of applications for this? We're not even getting a lot.
Currently, there's the moratorium, but I haven't had a lot of questions fielded about marijuana facilities recently. And if council's will is just to move forward with providing a buffer, then that would just go back to, I don't even know if it would have to go back to planning commission, but probably. And then planning commission would address the buffer situation and then send it back to council. Council wouldn't have to do anything with chapter 7.
They would recommend a buffer.
Well, I mean, I defer to Christopher, but if the planning commission would need to meet and approve that and send it over to council, but I believe council can override the plan.
Right, I didn't think it needed to go back to planning. first.
They're advisory, so you can take that opinion and do what you will with it, the recommendation.
Do the current buffers, because I know there were different classes and I was hoping to see a summary of that. Different distances for different kinds of businesses and between businesses of the same type versus not. Versus different kinds of businesses. I thought there was a difference in that. So the buffer for schools is 1,000 feet. The buffer for businesses of like type
Was
is
750, I think.
625 or.
What was 750?
But I thought there was one at 600 something.
Yeah,
There are, I think it has to do with.
Center existing retail at a 600-foot buffer.
Yeah, neighborhood 625.
Yep.
General corridor.
Yep. And truthfully, those were designed to not have legal nonconformities. They were drawn to that line to not create any further legal nonconformities, which is why expanding them is not an option, right?
Causes problems, right? They're existing.
So technically, we could do nothing with what exists and only have to revisit the micro businesses piece.
If you accept 5 or 6 more retail
Okay,
operations.
The possibility
Yeah.
of 5 or 6 more.
Yep.
Or we could,
because we actually know where they could go.
right, yeah. Or we could go to the cap and have to do all the other things we just talked about.
Right.
So if we put a buffer on the micro businesses. Would we also have to constrict them to the same zoning as, are they constricted right now to the same zoning as the retail business?
Yes.
And so if we put a,
I would just copy
so why was,
buffer around them, right? So like the buffer for these retail operations would apply to micro businesses as well. And then when a new micro business opens up, it would create a buffer between itself and other retail businesses. So it functions in the same way with buffers that you see indicated on the map. That would be the simplest way to do it. If you accept that there are going to be a handful of new facilities, either micro or conventional retail.
But then they would, oh, sorry.
go ahead.
No, but I just because this is what I thought you said before, but basically, so if we're saying based on the current buffering, there might be 6 to 7 new businesses possible. We add the buffers to the micro businesses, then they would too. So then there would be 6 to 7 between the micro businesses and other retail businesses altogether.
Yes, exactly. And some of these parcels are not realistic for development. I mean, one of them is Water Street, right? So
Right.
I don't
Yeah,
think we're
Water
doing it there.
Water Street, that's what I was.
Right.
Right.
Um,
That's what I mean.
So it's not.
So, and the odds of, on the northernmost part of town, those 2 or 3 parcels being developed in such a way, you can make your own assumptions about the likelihood of whether or not those things are going to happen.
Mhm.
So what,
Wait, Councilmember King had her hand up.
Just a quick question, just to clarify, I heard 5 or 6 and then I heard 6 or 7. I just,
So it technically, if you consider Water Street a possibility, which I really don't, you could see 7, right? In the green spot on the northern side, further down, there's 2, 3,
Water Street though, right? Is that 3 of them?
but they couldn't all be there, right?
Right, so that
So
would be one.
we count that as 1, right? So if you count these locations and assume that there's going to be a circle drawn around it once a new one populates, that leaves you with really about 5 realistic possibilities, maybe 6, depending on the exact parcel and the buffer it creates, right? So that's why it's a little ambiguous. If somebody goes directly smack dab in the center and creates a buffer around the others, then that number goes down. If they're on the edge and it doesn't create a buffer that
Mhm.
knocks out all the other parcels in that area, then you could see another one sneak in, right? So it really depends on how they populate within the available parcels.
Yeah, and if they're like coordinated and organized enough, which if they were really trying to get all the parcels possible.
So, the shape of these buffers is kind of interesting to me. So up on the Huron River Drive, you got Sticky, right? And it's kind of an oblong thing. It's not, so I'm like, is that just a,
It's the shape of the parcel that it touches,
ah,
changes the radius.
oh, because they have the,
Yeah, it gets
triangular
stretched out
piece
by
at
the
the end of that.
larger parcel.
so that other available space adjacent to that is still in that strip mall?
On the, oh, is that the long side? Where?
Mhm.
that's like
Their
between-
old location, basically,
Right,
right?
where they were before.
That's gotta be within or that's not within 600 feet of it.
According to ArcGIS, which, you know, it's not us going out there with a ruler, I promise.
Alright.
And so then there's one, around La Forge
Yep.
on both sides of Huron River Drive. I thought that property was an apartment complex at this point.
So, but it's zoned in such a way that would
So if
allow.
somebody
for it.
wanted to buy out the apartment complex and put up a gigantic business.
Exactly. And the same on the south side of town there, you know, that I think that's an Angstrom property, right? It's vacant. But the potential exists.
This is literally showing what exists, not necessarily the reality of like if it would ever become such a thing.
Exactly.
So then we're talking about far fewer.
You really are, depending on the assumptions you make about the property owners and what they're likely to do
Mhm.
if approached about opening a
Yeah.
retail business.
I'm thinking about the worst part and going like, who knows? Could be anything.
All right, so do folks feel like we can come to consensus and give staff direction on what we'd like them to work on and bring back to us? Are there any last burning questions? We did about, no pun intended.
So in general, I would like to see more consumption sites. And have the micro businesses and the retailers put under the same constraints. I know there is a difference in those in that there's a limited amount of inventory they can have on hand compared to retailers, right? So they're constrained by size, but the fact that they opened it up so that they could sell, you know, from other vendors, it's still a sizing issue. I mean, preferably, I'd like to see the available sites could be consumption lounges, but that's just me. And I don't really care if there's more retail places, and there's quite a few of those.
You have the power to amend the maps however you wish, or the cap.
I'm not a fan of consumption. Just saying. I'm a minority here, but. Except for maybe council.
I didn't hear you.
I said, I'm not a fan of consumption sites, but
Oh, okay.
you do.
Okay. Well, the
Oh, and
the
then-
first question, the primary one is,
Mhm.
do we want to regulate this by zoning or by the cap? The nuanced other stuff we can talk about, but we gotta give them something to start working on, to either bring something to us or do nothing.
The proposal of doing it both ways.
No, I don't believe there is.
What? Going what both ways?
I don't believe there is.
That would just be the cap because we already have zoning
Yeah,
that.
Gotcha. So it's not one or the other.
We can just-
If,
still-
if
still
it's a
nothing,
cap,
or
it
we're
would
doing a
be,
cap.
it would be both.
Right. So it's like leaving it as.
Remember
is.
the word, the beauty of this is that you could do this.
You can.
Well, I don't know, in terms of figuring out consensus, do we just want to go down and have people say? I would propose to continue with the zoning.
I would say cap.
Zoning? I mean, yeah, I'm not really interested in more businesses, I guess. I have to be, I'm just being honest. So I don't know what accomplishes that best, but
Cap would accomplish that best.
probably, yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
But it's not that I
struggle with
can't get
that.
behind zoning.
I mean, the cab put us through the ringer, y'all. You remember this?
I do.
Okay.
I'm just,
It was a lot. It was
So-
intense.
A cap is a poor way to allow new facilities, but it's a good way to prevent new facilities. Zoning is a great way to allow new facilities, but a terrible way to prevent new facilities. So there's a trade-off.
Yeah, I guess I'm not struggling, but I mean, when we're looking at where these potential locations are, though, it's like you don't know really, but it seems a little unrealistic, some of them. Water Street being the main one for me. Even on the edge over there by Sticky, like feels like, I don't know. Angstrom also, I don't know. We don't know, but maybe I have whiplash from that cap situation a couple years ago. Maybe that's what it is for me. I don't know. I would say zoning.
Well, and that's what.
Can I
think
just,
before
go ahead,
we
you can finish if you want.
Sorry, no, I was just gonna say, that zoning's probably the safest way to accomplish whatever the goal is gonna be, so. We're just giving our feelings. a minute.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, so that's what I was giving mine too. I'm like, I don't know.
Can I just add one more feeling then? One more feeling I'll add, which is like, because I like people just to like thinking about the things coming into my decision making. So my other feeling is for me, I think about for the city, benefits, losses. Benefits also include the revenue, which I know people are like, oh, we don't want to think about the revenue, but the revenue's real. The revenue's real for us. Like, I don't know, $500,000. Maybe it's just like me just being poor. Like I'm like $500,000 sounds like a lot. So I just can't get past that and thinking about, well, what is the city going to do instead? And what would the benefit be to our residents if we get to the place where we can actually use this revenue in ways that promote and propel the city forward in different ways. So hadn't talked about that. So I just wanted to bring that piece in as well as we're thinking about, all these things, and also recognizing the reality is it's not that we're saying we're going to all of a sudden have like 7 more places, but I think minimizing the amount of time and effort we spend on some of these issues opens up time and effort to be spent on other things. So I would love to not have to go through like having to do back and forth like around certain things also, because that takes a lot of time. It takes time with our attorney, all these different things.
And I think just to add on to what you just said, Councilmember Simmons, is that, yeah, we didn't talk a lot in this conversation about the benefits, but we spent a lot of time talking about that the last go round, around some of the increased like safety features and beautification of blighted locations and all that stuff like that. And so I'm glad that you brought that back up, because that was a huge part of the discussion. And I think that's important to note as well.
So a quick survey looked like we like a zoning better than a cap.
Yes, I got.
What? That's all you wanted to ask?
Oh, yeah.
That's why I didn't say anything. Well, I have lots of comments before I say anything about that. I want to go back to the statement that the cap got us into trouble before. Cap didn't get us into trouble. The fact that the rubric changed after the application got us into trouble. So that is still yet to be shown, that having a cap is, sure, there's a higher probability that it would be challenged legally, but it wasn't. And it never was. It was the fact that the rubric changed after the application. So that's why we had issues with that. As far as the number of these, you know, I don't have an issue with it. I really don't. I think we have other businesses that are far outnumber these that don't pay any taxes at all. And I find that problematic. So, you know, the costs and benefits of those are not up for discussion. People don't want to talk about those and whether those should be regulated in this way. And so, you know, that, you know, if we're going to go there, you know, there are businesses within this community that. So I have no issue with the way this is drawn. What I'd like to see is some way to address the consumption so that certain groups and classes of people in our city are not discriminated against in this business. As far as the social equity, I think there were lots of things in the social equity part of the original ordinance that were well-intentioned that fell away with the state. And, you know, recognizing that the rubric we came up with placed an unfair burden on those businesses who we were trying to help equalize. So, you know, at this point, you know, if we can figure out a zoning way to do this, it monitors itself in the long run, and we don't have to take up time, as Councilperson Simmons was saying, is like attorney time, staff time, working up a rubric, doing all of that. So, you know, financially, economically, I think that's the most reasonable way to do this. It allows for more businesses to bring in revenue, and it lessens the cost of the city in terms of administration.
The path of least resistance for us, if you're okay with more facilities. So I can come back with micro businesses drawn into buffers and addressing the issue of social consumption.
I don't think we're done talking yet.
Okay, sorry, I'm just trying to
Yeah,
recap. it.
that's what Steve wants.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
I'm happy to I want to
Yeah,
make
so
sure I
hold on
capture
for a
the
second,
thoughts.
right, yeah. So, can I say?
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, a couple of things based on statements that were said. While, you know, legalization of marijuana passed in the state and, you know, Ypsilanti citizens overwhelmingly supported that effort, I think that was the legalization of marijuana. That wasn't a comment or statement on how, who, what, where, when, and all that stuff. So I want to be clear on that too. We haven't ever really asked that question, right? We only know what we hear from people who contact us directly. So we don't have our finger on the pulse of that necessarily. I do think the market will, in the end, kind of bear out what, you know, different places can sustain, right? Because while we were early in the game, and yes, we have gotten revenue from this that has been beneficial to our community in that respect. And so that's one thing that I guess I appreciate from this. You know, we'll now be seeing competition, right? Because now Ypsi Township is going to, you know, get into allowing this and things like that. And so, right, I think I see, as I've talked to others, that, you know, even if we allow endless amount of businesses, I think we won't have in a year or 2, 5 years, 10, whatever, that amount of businesses. It will level out. And I'll give the businesses credit too for really, you know, renovating, taking care of, and whatever, a lot of dilapidated buildings that we had. So I can't say I can't say anything about that, right? I mean, anything bad about that. So I appreciate that. I will say though, like I said, while I appreciate the revenue that we have received, I do think that there is a, you know, a balance with that. I'm not willing to kind of sell our soul for, you know, any amount, you know, just to bring in that revenue, because I do think, is there any other, you know, harm or issues that are happening by, you know, if we're not going to be thoughtful about this. You know, I don't know. I mean, I do think there's other businesses that, like the vaping you'd mentioned, I know is a big concern with high school kids, and the schools have expressed that with us. But I'm just kind of telling you some of my thoughts about this, I guess. So to me, it's not just, you know, the revenue, you know, that we want to generate an unlimited amount, because I think we have to find the balance for what makes sense. I have a hard time getting behind consumption sites. And so while I've been willing to, you know, support other efforts, I think that's one that's going to be tough. And I don't believe that I'm the only council member who feels that way. And so now to me would be the time if you have those feelings, because otherwise, Mr. Jacobs, based on Mayor Pro Tem's, comments might be going down a certain path, but that's not a path that I support. So,
Or any other, I believe me, I just want to make sure we bring back the maps that fit what council wants to see.
yeah, so while I can get behind, I think zoning makes a lot of sense. I mean, would I probably prefer a cap? Sure, I probably would. I understand that maybe that isn't the easiest way to go, or maybe the wisest. But I can be flexible there, but I think that's the one area where I'm really not flexible.
What does not flexible mean?
I don't want any consumption
I
sites.
don't want any.
No, I don't.
So I have a question, because you said that we don't have a way to have a pulse on what people want. But my question to you directly, have you talked to your residents? Because I feel that there's been a lot of time, right? If this was your issue before, you could talk to people. I know I've had public forums, I've asked people. Plus, and then I go to places, I talk to people, right? So I actually disagree. I actually feel like I have a pretty good pulse because I actually do that. So, yeah.
So I do, and I appreciate that. That's why I have the perspective I do. What I meant by pulse is like, we have one vote of the voters. So I don't, using that to say that that's a statement of support for all things marijuana is not, I don't think that's accurate.
I
It's
agree.
still not inaccurate, though.
Well,
No, I don't think it's accurate at all.
this came up when the former mayor, Bashir, was sitting here. And I brought that up when we first started talking about this. I said, the vote on legalization is not the vote on opting into businesses. He
Correct.
threw a fit. And I was like, it's logically a different argument, it's a different topic. Having said that, and having worked in, so my neighborhood, 4 doors from my house, a dispensary opened. And initially there was an outcry against that facility by the original proposers of the facility. When that went away, I was happy to see that. Somebody else picked it up. And having worked in that facility, the number of people from my neighborhood that went there that were very happy to have it in the neighborhood was far outweighed the handful of people that argued against it in the first place. So I think I do have that pulse in terms of that neighborhood and that place. But again, we're at a point where we're going to plateau if we haven't already. I mean, there's still interest, but just Skymet was a huge thing. And they went bust because they probably tried to expand too fast, but that's what it is. But I don't see it as being, I don't see all those sites being filled ever. And I have my crystal ball. So if you want to ask,
The magic 8 ball. Councilmember Richardson.
Yeah, and I'll just say, Steve, so your pulse, I understand. You're right. I saw the discussions, heard the discussions about dispensary, and right, people kind of calm down. I think these businesses are generally very well run because they're so well regulated. So it's not necessarily a statement about that. But your pulse on that was about dispensaries, not consumption sites, right? Because that's what that was about. And people calm down, right? I mean, and I'm not saying, and I could be way off and wrong based on the, people I've spoken to or my perspective, and I'm probably a minority voice here. I mean, I don't think I'm totally alone. I think the other council before was a little more in line with my view, but, and I do think the market will bear it out. So I'm just giving my 2 cents that, there is not necessarily 100% support for that avenue of things.
Just to add that voter participation increased because of this being on ballot. So when you so just to say, right, yes, 100%. I recognize some people vote for things because they're like, oh, we want to feel good that the police aren't going to stop people for marijuana, even though we don't believe that people should use it. Fine. Okay. I understand it. But to be clear, when we look at the vote and we look at the numbers of people who were coming out that don't typically vote, don't come out in the numbers they do by population, right? We understand that it wasn't just people who were like, oh, we just want to make sure we feel good that it's not illegal anymore. So I just want to name, when we think about what those numbers show, the majority of people not only wanted it to be decriminalized, they wanted it to be legalized so that they can consume legally and be able to go out and purchase legally. So I just want to, like, when you think about who was being pushed, it was not by people who were like, oh, just decriminalize. That's a whole different vote.
No,
And I just want to name, I do think it's a little, I think it's important to say, because we're talking about feelings, facts, what we drive policy on. I think we have to be careful around trying to layer on what really is kind of, who are we to make decisions about what people choose to do? We're making decisions by either creating place and space or not. So just recognize what that means. If you think it should be decriminalized, but people should not be able to consume it. So
I wanna say something about that, both arguments, because while I am not against consumption sites, I think what I do agree with what Councilmember Jason is said, though, is the actual question, that is the fact, right? What people voted on, the question was around legalizing marijuana. It was not legalizing marijuana, having social consumption sites, having this, having that, having that. And so I think that's the point she's making, not to make an assessment of what people's allegiance or feelings are in the community, but what the 81% of voters voted on a specific question.
Mhm.
And that, I think, is all that Jennifer was saying. I do agree that we should not be making policy decisions personally about what people should do with their time or marijuana, because I think people should do whatever they want with, within reason and healthy and safe. But I do think that the fact is the question was the question. And what we've heard from folks, those are the feelings, those are the nuanced conversations.
We can come back with those sets of maps and we can hash out that decision when it's time to make that vote, if that's what council would like. Otherwise, if there are other things that we want to see in the maps, just want to make sure I capture all of that.
And that's fine from my perspective. And thank you
Yeah,
for,
no, I
yeah,
was
because,
gonna ask,
yeah, so I don't have to make any more comments about inferences. And so thank you. Right. And again, I would appreciate seeing that. And this is, something
Yeah.
maybe,
I would appreciate both.
more comfortable
maps.
with.
Great.
That
Absolutely.
way we can have a full discussion rather, with what the visuals could be. Mayor Pro Tem, the agenda.
Just a question. I don't want to put Jennifer on the spot at all. I just don't know what the arguments against the consumption side are.
I don't either.
Okay. I actually don't think I'm the only one who's feeling here.
No, I know. I
I'm just
know,
the one who's
but I
saying it, but-
don't know what those are.
Right, yeah.
It just never came up in the previous conversations we've had. And I can certainly talk to you. I don't remember those. I mean, this was like, it was like, no, we shouldn't have those. It was like, is it a health issue? Is it, people stumbling around outside afterwards? I don't know what that is.
A fan for, right, and I think also comments I've heard.
Well, I'm in agreement with the not supporting like the consumption sites, but when I think of a consumption site, I guess I think of the same, I view them the same way as I view a bar,
Mhm.
right? So while I'm saying I don't agree with them, that's coming from personal feeling, but I really don't see anything different as a bar. So just based on that, I'm on the fence of it. So yeah, I'm back and forth.
So like you are speaking to, and I just want to say things so I can have better understanding. So around like loitering or like the complaints that we get from some of our business owners right now, and in the downtown or depot town around, the bars and alcohol. And I think that's my rationale for actually supporting it, because having a designated space where folks can go so they're not breaking the law. Or like Steve said earlier, if they live in an apartment and they don't own their own private residence and there's no smoking, period, in a space, like what options do we give folks who that is something that they need or want to do? It doesn't even have to be a need, because it's legal. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not into policing what people do.
Can we put it under like open smoke? You know how you can.
Because I'm gonna be honest, a week ago, I was gonna talk about this during proposed business, but like the Spark in the Park Festival happened over 2 days last weekend. That was the most well-organized, well-executed event that I have seen in a long time. I mean, in terms of just like, keeping folks in proximity of where they're supposed to be, you know, and in collaboration with our police department, with our fire, with EMS. I mean, it was, and folks felt safe to indulge in that space and spend their time there. And when they left, they knew that when you leave here, that is no longer allowed. And so if you leave here and you're out of pocket, that is a risk that you're taking. And people had to understand that in that process. And it went off, in my opinion, without pretty much a hitch, right? So I think it's the same as someone going into a bar and they stumble out, like, that's why, like, you know, bartenders cut people off, or they try to, because you know that that's the risk that folks take when they overindulge and then you move on. That's a personal choice. While we don't want to see it happen, people do that all the time.
Yeah, it's too bad though, because people die.
And they do. And again, then they do. But we don't police that in the same way as we're trying to police this, is what I'm saying. And so we need to have a broader conversation then. If we're going to talk about like our personal values and opinions, we're gonna have to have a different conversation. That's what this is right now.
Liquor is more dangerous, I've been told. I don't do
Absolutely,
either.
in my
but-
opinion. But you know, that's my opinion. I'm no, you know, I'm not a researcher. So I just think that we have to be honest about what is the root, right? What is the driving force behind our decision-making when we are, you know, trying to make policy decisions. For me, I personally have views and behaviors that I would not exhibit or I would not indulge in, right? But overall, as the mayor, as a council member, my choices are not about me. They are about the broader community. And so I could say a lot of things personally, but overall, you know.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I
Yeah.
think I'm speaking for the broader, the part of the community that isn't a fan.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
and there's both, there's all sides. That's what I mean. There's like
So I
all
wanna make
sides of
sure their
this.
voice is heard. Well, even though I know it's not necessarily popular here, you know, with the rest of the council. And I mean, I'm just gonna say it again. I think the businesses are actually very well run. You know, when they're, it's not actually many worries that I've heard or have nothing to do with inside. It's when, you know, again, with people
Schools
leaving,
outside.
you know, and, you know, right. No, we have not done, you know, a great job with bars and alcohol, you know, and honestly, to me, vaping is probably a bigger issue for
Vaping,
youth people, but
They are.
you know, I mean, I'm just
yeah.
saying, so I'm trying to just bring out a voice too, that I think does not get heard,
Yeah.
because it's valid as well.
And I do appreciate not letting like opinions and voices get lost in the sauce, because that's our job, right? To lift all of the perspectives. I just think, you know, this happened before. It's happened many times actually around marijuana in this community, even before I was on city council, I remember. So I think we're gonna always have the right fight, right? Like what's right? What should we do? And we have to make the best decision. We're not gonna make the perfect decision.
Well, and I'll just say, I think I'm a reasonable person, right?
you
And
are.
I'm not an all or nothing. And so I'm not trying to stand in front, you know, and say, I'm just saying, but it's not all either. So where is the middle ground and where is the place where we can meet in the middle? Right? So yes, I would like to see more than one, just one map with it all on this way.
By all means.
But where is the, you know, so
That's what I-
that's a reasonable solution. So that's what I want to see.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I just want to state that there are clarifications in here that are very much appreciated. So the operations, you know, if the fee part can be changed to fine, because I think it calls it a fee in there, then I'm cool with those things. And this other things that I mean, to me, there's a lot to talk about besides this basic issue. For instance, the 60 days. You know, it was ambiguous because in one place it was 6 weeks, and another place it was 6 months. Our experience is that a lot of those business owners and permit recipients took a lot longer because there was a lot to do. And, you know, like I said, I went and visited the Forest Street facility last night. That was a morass of environmental problems, and which was pointed out last night that the environmental problems came from city property. So, having said that, I'd like to talk about that further in terms of whether that 6 months is still a reasonable period of time for these people to do that. A lot of those facilities came up on their renewal without having opened. And so that 6 months wasn't long enough. And I'd like to have that be part of the conversation at another time because we're getting on. So when you bring the things back, I'd like to go through that again as well.
Yeah.
That's it.
And
Gonna have to come back.
The state language.
Okay, so
State language.
the appeals language, the issue of consumption lounges, the issue of micro businesses. Have I captured everything? Great.
I don't know.
It's all good.
Yeah,
Okay, awesome.
businesses, consumption, appeal process.
And then like probably the taking out the social equity language that's in there too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We don't have to do this all at, excuse me, all at the same time. We can just concentrate on the zoning first and then we can get to chapter 7. It doesn't all have to be done. at the same
Yeah, December, right? Okay. All right.
Do it all at
October-ish,
once.
Right? In order to fulfill the notice requirements in the 2 readings.
Right.
Well, this is, chapter 7 doesn't require a newspaper publication, so it just needs a week in advance and then 2 readings and then 30 days.
Okay.
But if everything is set with the zoning, it doesn't really matter, because then we already are accepting that there's gonna be more.
Last burning commentary on this work session.
I think I'll
Pun
just,
intended.
I'll just
Yes.
say that, I think regardless of whatever we do, that the market will eventually stabilize based on what's happening with communities outside of us and adjacent to us. And so it'll find its way. So even though it's painful for us to
Yes, it is.
hash all this out, but
Every time it
Mhm.
hurts. Okay. Thank you, Christopher. I think we're good. I hope so.
My pleasure. Thank you, council.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Members of the public, it is now time for public comment. Is it? Wait.
There is no one signed up.
Oh, there's no one signed up. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address council? You'll have 3 minutes. Please, good evening.
My name is Sasha Anisimova. I just had a quick address to make. So I applied for the Police Advisory Commission, and I just wanted to make my a bit of an appearance and say that I know I had spoken to some people here, but I hope I get accepted on that commission. I do want to see my reasons for going into the commission is I'm a social work student. So a big thing I hope to see this city reach is rescue squads for mental health crises and nonviolent domestic violence situation. I guess violence is redundant, but domestic dispute situations. But beyond that, this is just me introducing myself and kind of stepping into this hall for a first time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course.
thank you for your
Thank you so
interest.
much. Yeah, thank you for your interest. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to address council? Anyone online?
There is one individual with their hand raised, Jared Jeffries. I will allow them to speak now.
Good evening.
Hello, Mayor Brown and members of City Council. Thank you so much for letting us speak. My name is Jared. I work with Cannabis Council Law Firm and the Michigan Cannabis Association. We were the event organizers for the Spark in the Park Music Festival held over the past weekend. And members of our law team participated in the drafting for the state legislation for cannabis legalization here in Michigan. So just to speak on what the people did and didn't vote for back in 2018, when over 350,000 Michigan citizens from all over the state signed a petition for the law, there were express provisions for both cannabis consumption lounges and cannabis consumption events. So in 2018, when the people did vote, they did in fact vote in favor of public consumption in a number of different capacities. We'd also like to thank the city in general, just for your amazing input, your help along the way with organizing the festival, your help with keeping the peace during the event itself. And we just really look forward to working with you guys, not just at Spark in the Park, but for a number of, public cannabis events moving forward.
Thank you. Is there anyone else online?
No one else has their hand raised.
Seeing none, I will close public comment. And Councilmember Tucson, you have our consent agenda.
I do. Resolution number 2023-108 resolved by the Council of the City of Ypsilanti that the following items be approved. Resolution number 2023-109 approving the City Council minutes of June 6, 2023. I'm sorry. Resolution number 2023-110 approving the contract for the Fire and Police Pension Administrative Services for fiscal year 2023 to 2024. And resolution. That's it.
We
We did move it. And I so move.
It's been moved and supported. Clerk Kalunga, please call the roll.
Mayor Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Tucson,
Yes.
Councilmember D Simmons,
Yes.
Councilmember J Simmons,
Yes.
Councilmember King,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen.
Yes.
Motion carries with 6 yes, 1 absence.
Would it be too far to me to suggest a recess so that I can actually look at the application since I have not been able to do that?
Could we also, I know, we moved that one thing to the end. Can we put
We
that at
put
the
it at-
I was
top?
gonna say we put it at the top
So
and stay.
Reagan doesn't have to stay till the end. of the meeting.
Yeah.
Are you okay if we do that one now?
Which one?
The tax levy, the levy?
Sure.
And then we can take a break?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, all right, we're gonna move that one. We're gonna do it now.
Okay, resolution number 2023-111, resolved by the Council of the City of Ypsilanti that the city treasurer be authorized to levy and assess on the July 2023 tax roll, the attached listing of unpaid bills totaling $265,895.62. And I so move. And I guess the rest should be read into record for the list, because there's no list.
Oh, There's no.
There's
Just
nothing.
this, all right.
Yes, okay.
Or
The moving supporters. Okay. Good evening, Reagan.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I think council member has a question.
Yes.
Member D Simmons?
Well, I wish I was more prepared. My goal had been to try to go and visit some of these sites, but I'll just bring the question up because when I was looking at this, right, so the largest amount for the assessments are in delinquent water. That's like a lot. And so I was just trying to get a sense of some of those different sites, what some of these issues might be in terms of the residents' inability to pay for water and things of that sort. So that's why I wanted to pull it out, just because, obviously seeing water as a necessity, what happens when people aren't able to pay for it, and what we should be thinking about and doing about that. And I wanted to try to go to some place, because like I said, just to see, are they concentrated all in certain places? What does that mean? Is it areas where it's our poorest, economically poorest residents, things of that sort? So I don't know if you have any of those answers, or if folks kind of looking at this and knowing your wards have any thoughts about any of that around water and or things that have come up previously as council has approved these.
Well, I can first say that many of the delinquent water are from Ward 1. I know previously there has been conversation around, some of them are folks who from time to time are unable or have inability to keep up with certain bills, but I can't speak to every single, all the addresses. We have had folks who have communicated that in the past and have tried to provide support. And, when I was on council before, but that's about as broad as I can give, because I don't really know all of the. City manager.
Yeah, DPS Director Bonnie Wester works with Yucca quite a bit, and she's indicated that they do have a payment assistance plan. for those who are unable to meet their bill. So I hope residents in Ward 1 are aware of that.
And I think so. I think that, you know, it's
Just,
from person to, you know, household to household, what the situation is. Mayor Pro Tem?
My question is a question of process, and I don't recall seeing delinquent water on this before, but
me either.
Delinquent water is a special assessment provided by Yucca. It appears on all tax bills.
So every time we've looked at this, delinquent water has been a category, because I don't remember that at all. And the conversations I've had with the director of Yucca is that they do have these.
Mhm.
So it's like, what moves it from them trying to collect on their own into our purview?
That would probably be a question for Yucca.
They just send us a list. Is that how it goes?
Yes, so they did send us a list. There was a year when they didn't send us a list
COVID.
during the COVID time.
Mhm.
But then every year it's been included in our July taxes, summer taxes.
Mr. Barr?
Yucca is an agreement between the Ypsilanti Township and the city. And when the organization was formed, there's three companies there. There's the township part, city part, and then the Yucca part. And the reason the city gets involved is because these are people in the city that where they are on the city side of the ledger for Yucca. That helps.
Yeah, clearly my failing memory about never seeing this before is that issue. But it seems like we're taking people who can't pay their Yucca water bill and putting a lien on their property with it. So adding insult to injury with this, I mean, personal responsibility is personal responsibility, but there are a lot of people who, in the city of Detroit that are having their water shut off because they can't, and that is a huge issue. And I have always thought that we were doing a good job of this. But with this, I see this being, those folks who can't pay are now being penalized with putting their house in jeopardy with this. And I don't know any other mechanism to collect that, but I find this very troubling.
So are these properties inhabited? I'm assuming because you gotta have water to.
So what happens here is, let's say this was not collected in our taxes, then this is now forwarded to the county. And the county, they have some programs as well. So they're not really going to foreclose on the property right away. They're going to talk to the residents and see if they have options regarding payment for their delinquent water or any other assessment in their property.
Oh, wait,
Yeah.
wait, can I just clarify that I understand what you just said? Did you just say, well, no, okay, let me not say it that way. Okay, what I just heard was that if the city does not add this into our tax assessment, then it would go to the county, and the county has maybe more programs that might be able to work with the residents in order to get the bills paid.
Delinquent taxes are all sent to the county, so we would put these special assessments on the bills, and then if they go unpaid, then they go to the county, and then the county has programs to help them pay their taxes.
Yes, yes. And these are some of our county treasurer, Catherine McCleary, right? Okay, yes. So I've heard about some of the work that she does with folks around that. So I just wanted to kind of make sure, okay, that that's in the same space. Yeah, I agree with this idea of adding liens to property based on some of these things. And water feels really hard for me, so.
Further questions for Reagan?
So process question again. Is it possible to take all of the delinquent waters out of this and approve everything else? If so, then what happens with that collection?
I think it's within the power of the council if you wanted that to be removed. But with regards to the collection, we will have to talk to YCUA because this is one of their ways to be able to collect. Also for them to be able to collect or to pay whatever bills they have as well. So if you remove it, then I'm not sure what
And we
what
want
other
to pay it
ways.
out of the general fund. Because we owe that.
We're
right?
still, yeah,
Well, they would still get paid once it gets settled. They just wouldn't have to necessarily go through something that would put a lien on their house, at least not us having to go through a process
Hey,
to do
Andrew.
that.
So we don't get settled by the, if this does not go to our tax bill, then we don't get settled by the county.
Mhm.
Because this is not going to be in our part of our settlement from the county at the end of the tax collection period, because it's not part of our tax bill. If you plan to remove it right now from our special assessment, I'm not going to include this in our tax bills. And YCA now has to collect. And I'm not sure what other mechanism they
could
could
send it
do
to-
to collect this.
They could send it to collections, which will add another 50% onto that.
yeah.
Which would make it even
Yucca
more
is gonna
difficult for the
get to
people.
their
to pay.
money.
And are we in, isn't this a part of the agreement that we're in, that we're in with them, that this comes to us? Is this, like, this is not just arbitrary that it comes to us to go on our tax? bill,
No.
Right? This clearly is a part of some process that we've been,
Mhm.
we are like in agreement on,
Yucca gets their money through Ypsilanti residents by the rates that council.
that we approve.
This wouldn't come out of our general fund. They would just find a more difficult way to get their money.
Punitive, it feels like.
And so if we pass this, it goes to the county has programs to help assist these folks with $120,000.
If we pass
On our
this,
tax bill.
it goes to our tax
It
bill
goes
and then we
unpaid,
collect.
Then it goes to the county.
Yes.
Mr. Barr.
The state law provides that the water is a lien against the property. That's why if you buy a piece of property, title company will have an escrow, make sure that the tax is paid. Or that the water is paid.
Right.
But that's obviously, yeah, obviously coming into conflict with a lot of these property owners. I mean, which might be because they're no longer under mortgage, whether it's that they already own these properties and so the escrow no longer applies.
Mortgage company would just increase your escrow if your taxes go up. So you're gonna pay for it.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, if you're out of mortgage.
And I'm not sure with regards to your other question with regards to the capacity to pay with regards to the other properties. Because some probably are just landlords who are not able to pay. And so we don't know the details of all those delinquent parcels.
And so I just want to clarify, because I think there was maybe confusion. This is to vote to get it on our tax bill. And then if it goes unpaid, unresolved, then it will proceed to the county.
So it will go on our July 1st bill and it will be due September 14 without penalty and interest. And by February, if still unpaid by February 28, that's the time we now give it to the county for collection.
Are there further questions for Mr. Basadika? We vote on this.
And so this will be effective because it is June now, this July?
It's July 1st, yes.
Hearing or seeing no hands and hearing no voices. Okay,
you.
thank you. Clerk Kalanga, please call the roll.
Councilmember Tucson,
Yes.
Councilmember D Simmons,
No.
Councilmember J Simmons,
Yes.
Councilmember King,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Brown,
Yes.
motion carries with 4 yes, 2 no, 1 absence.
Thank you all. Okay, we're going to take, now Steve, how long we need?
15-minute break? Is that enough?
15 minutes.
10-minute break?
Minutes.
All right, I got it.
We got 10 minutes. We're taking a
Steve
10-minute break. Feel like they're about to cross the street, baby? Let me just ask really quick.
Oh, my God.
Why are you laughing so hard?
Oh, I just realized who.
Okay,
Uh,
we can start the discussion, right? Just gonna interject real quickly.
Right, you should.
Huh? Yeah. Councilmember Simmons, we're gonna get started.
Hear my.
Oh. Sorry, that's what that's for. My bad. Okay, I don't like to use this. I don't like
I wondered why that thing was sitting there all these
It's
years.
for. All right, we're gonna call the meeting back to order. And our those who went on their adventure will join us once they get back, so we can open the discussion to appoint the members of the Community Benefits Agreement Committee for 206 North Washington. So Councilmember Sweet is not here.
He did say that he would like to continue being the interested
Yes.
council member.
And he let me know that as well. He just couldn't be at the meeting today. He is out of town. He also did give recommendations just based on who attended the meeting, but then we also had folks who submitted applications online that we can also consider. And so I got clarification earlier. We can have up to 8,
So up to 8 of these applicants, and then
the council member.
council member suite would be the.
Yes, the 9th person. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, we have 9 applicants, 8 spots.
Mm-hmm.
Let the discussion commence. I will say, let me go back to what Councilmember Sweet submitted 1, 2, 3, 4 names, and I think that was who was in attendance, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
One, yeah, one thing I was gonna offer, I'm trying to get my iPad to unfreeze itself, but when I was looking at the applicants, one thing I noticed, one of the applicants had served on a number of different boards and committees too. And so I would probably prioritize the other members, because I think this is a great way to get involved. And that was Andy Fanta. So anyway, so that would be what I would suggest would be approving the other members.
Yeah, I agree with that. I support that. I know, we just all pause and just look at them
I agree.
like, yeah, but I
agree.
I agree with you. Yeah, we were talking about Jennifer, but I agree. I know that folks took time to look at the applications while we were on break. Do you have anything that came up for you that you want to add, or?
Yeah, no, I mean, it looks like a diverse group of people that have been here for varying amounts of time. Concerned if we need a JD, there's another JD that has applied. And I agree. I know a few of these people personally and would certainly highly recommend them.
So I can't make any motions or anything like that. But
So I would like to motion to accept the 8 applicants with the exception of Andy Fanta for the CBO committee.
The second.
all right, that's been moved and supported. And just to repeat, the idea is that Mr. Fanta has had an opportunity to serve in a multitude of functions and on different boards and committees. And so giving the other 8 folks who maybe have not had as much of an opportunity a chance to participate, because we can only take 8 and there are 9 applicants. So just want to make sure you all know. All right. Any discussion? Further? All right, seeing none, Clerk Kalunga.
Councilmember Tucson,
Yes.
Councilmember D Simmons,
Yes.
Councilmember J Simmons,
Yes.
Councilmember King,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Brown.
Yes.
Motion carries with 6 yes, 1 absent.
You, Councilmember D Simmons, you have our next resolution.
Thank you for being here tonight.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Oh, wait.
Unless something else.
Are we here already?
Yeah, we're at appointments.
Okay. Resolved that the council of the city of Ypsilanti, that the following residents be appointed to the city of Ypsilanti boards and commissions as indicated below. Michael Vincent for the Civil Service Commission, and Alexandra Anisimova for the Police Advisory Commission. And I so move.
Support.
I moved and supported. Any discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember D Simmons,
Yes.
Councilmember J Simmons,
Yes.
Councilmember King,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Tucson.
Yes.
Motion carries with 6 yes, 1 absent.
Thank you. Before we move on to the next resolution, would it be possible if someone, of course, I can't do it, to appoint Sasha to the YPAC? Because I don't, you already had your meeting for this month, right?
No,
it's Thursday.
Oh, it's Thursday. So will we have another meeting before?
Was Sasha not this person that we just did?
No, that was Alexandra. That's a different person.
That's Sasha.
That
Same
is-
person.
Oh, is it?
That's her.
Sasha is a nickname for Alexandra.
Oh,
Okay, my bad. Look, because I got that email from Gail and it said Sasha, and I was like, I haven't seen that. I'm like, okay, my bad. My apologies, y'all. I was just trying to make sure we did not.
Mhm.
Okay, never mind. I'm gonna Men in Black, everybody. Let's move on. Okay, moving on. Councilmember King, you
I'm
ever?
gonna go back past the delinquent water to,
Yeah,
This
everything
last-
before now.
maybe that explains. why.
Resolution number 2023-113, resolved by the council of the city of Ypsilanti, whereas the city strongly supports zero tailpipe emission vehicles within the city. And whereas the need to support a variety of low carbon transportation options has been a long-term goal of the city, supported in the master plans, sustainability plan, climate action plan, and more. Now therefore be resolved that the city council hereby authorize the city manager to enter into the attached lease agreement with Charge EV LLC to install and operate level 2 chargers. I so move.
Sport.
All right. Good evening, Director Westler.
Mayor Brown. I'm just here if anybody has questions.
Okay. Anybody have questions for Bonnie?
I feel like I'm trying to get it. Hold on.
Sorry, my iPad. No. I'm an Android user myself.
Okay, so a couple of quick questions I had was, one, so has it been determined yet, like what percentage of the fee the city would?
It
Yep.
looks like we collect about 3 cents per kilowatt hour of whatever it is they.
um, And then this would be. And so is this also looking to consider all of these different locations or just some of them? So they're looking to have maybe like, what is that, 6 different ones?
I think it's 3 downtown in Depot Town and 1 in West Cross. Oh, no, we shot for 4.
So it could be 4.
Yeah, so we included City Hall as sort of a last minute thing. The city doesn't have any EV vehicles or
ATM machines. Have any EVs. Part of that is just the logistics involved in getting a charger. So we said, hey, would you be willing to put one at City Hall? You know, would it be available for the public to use as well?
Mhm.
Yeah, we got a couple of employees.
I know there's employees in
Mhm.
there. Yep.
There's, yep, there, I'm about to get one, so.
I feel like, okay,
Not that I work here, but.
I was gonna say, what?
You work in here.
I don't even work
Oh, wow.
here, but I'm gonna drive my.
Is it
career and drive-
the word work or here?
Yes.
Mhm. Okay, any other questions about this or Bonnie?
So, okay, so then this is just so I would feel clear. So we are saying, hey, these are spaces that the city owns. So you can lease here. They pay us an amount of money for putting it there. And then they rent it, or people, when they use it, they will be charged a fee for usage, and then the city would get some of that fee.
So the only money the city is receiving is the percentage of the fee. So we
I see.
aren't receiving any sort of lump sum or anything like that, but the trade-off to that is they're doing basically all of the work.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
So, not pertaining to this, but other arrangements for these things.
Mhm.
It's like when the city of Ann Arbor put in an underground garage and they have all those things. They did the infrastructure for that, or somebody else like?
Either they or their parking partner, I forget who does their infrastructure there. There have been many iterations of agreements throughout the many years. I know that they've gotten several grants throughout the years. They recently did a deal with, I want to say, ChargePoint for some downtown chargers where they participated in the installation cost, and then they have a contract with ChargePoint to maintain it and whatnot, and, you know, they net out who makes money in the end. But at this point in the industry, nobody's installing free-to-use chargers anymore. Everything's on it.
So if we go forward with trying to get these in the Frog Island lot,
Mhm.
this would be one avenue to have that covered as opposed to getting grants from the state to cover this particular part of that cost.
So this is a leading program, in my opinion. Because of the state of EV uptake overall in the market, a lot of the dealers are pushing very hard to install additional chargers in order to reduce both range anxiety and charger anxiety. This is someplace that should have chargers, half of them are broken, whatnot. So by putting more chargers out in the world, they decrease that anxiety and have more uptake of the EVs. If this is successful, we'll probably see fewer deals like this, because right now this is a new initiative, and so this sort of pre-installation is them. A lot of the Michigan grant programs that are out there are really tied to tourism. Because you can get to most points along 94 pretty easily, so the destinations for tourism are considered to be Ann Arbor and Detroit. People don't need a charger in between Ann Arbor and Detroit. And our downtown is just far enough away from 94 that we are not considered, you know, particularly attractive place for this state to grant us. They're really up north, and in the UP. So this is our best shot at getting free chargers. for lack of a better word. And this is the only paperwork we've had to do so far.
Whoa.
If we had
Sweet
more
Zealand
weed
store.
stores, we'd be at destination.
Well, I
think
was
Ann
gonna make
Arbor
that
has
joke.
More weed stores than
my
we do still, so, yeah.
We could put that as part of their license. No, I'm just kidding.
So we
All
do
right.
have several incentives in the zoning code for people to reduce the overall number of parking spaces by providing an EV charger. So I think it buys you 4 spaces.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
All right. Any additional question? Seeing none, Clerk Kalanga, please call the roll.
Councilmember Jay Simmons,
Yes.
Councilmember King,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Tucson,
Yes.
Councilmember D Simmons,
Yes.
6 yes, 1 absent, motion carries.
Mayor Pro Tem, you have our next, final resolution.
Resolution number 2023-114, resolved by the Council of the City of Ypsilanti, whereas Bellflower is a locally owned and operated business seeking to expand its market locally, and whereas space constraints at 209 Pearl Street make expansion and outdoor usage challenging, and whereas the City of Ypsilanti has adopted as one of its goals that Ypsilanti is a great place to do business, especially the green and creative kind, with special emphasis on local entrepreneurship and creative ventures. And whereas the City of Ypsilanti owns the existing parking area and seeks to activate spaces within the downtown. Whereas all construction will meet building codes, historic district preservation requirements, and ADA accessibility requirements, and will not impede through pedestrian traffic. Now therefore be it resolved that the mayor and city clerk are authorized to enter into the attached license agreement on behalf of the City of Ypsilanti, subject to the approval of city attorney, and I so move.
Or been moved and supported. Welcome back.
Why, hello, Mayor.
Hello, Director Wesley.
I think this is fairly straightforward. We have here Representative from Bellflower, Mr. Maynard, if anybody wants to ask any questions about the operations. The bit about through traffic, et cetera, is a little bit of boilerplate. It's really intended to be a place for their smoker for meats, so it won't really be a place where people will go through. The space is currently underutilized. It's a weirdly located space. It really is only good for the little loading zone service that it serves. And so it's not currently making us any money. There is a space in the lease agreement for a fee that is, of course, at council's discretion. The other complicating factor to this is earlier on today. So as you know, the North Adams parking lot has been a little bit torn up because of all of the Yucca construction. We've been talking with Yucca and their contractors about the potential for mill and overlay. So basically a pretty significant repair of that lot, since they've got the contractor there already, et cetera. That may move forward, that may not move forward, but that is something that logistically we would be able to work out, hopefully with Mr. Maynard and his team. If that does actually move forward, but. Any questions?
Any questions? Mayor Pro Tem.
I have a health question
Mhm.
in terms of this is a smoker in a east-bounded canyon of sorts.
Mhm.
Where's that smoke gonna go?
That's a great question.
Are there any residences in those buildings above the smoke?
We already have a smoker just on the other side of the building, so this would just be moved to the other side where the space is. The smoke just rises and it smells delicious.
Also, it comes with
That's
free
a perk.
smells.
Yeah, there have been
I thought that was only Jimmy John's that had free.
These are
smells.
better smells.
better smells,
Better smell.
Way better, okay.
like better smells.
It's a more better smell. Exactly, more better smell.
But yeah, the upstairs of the building is not residential, it's offices and no one there is complained about the smoke, so. And there's
I wanna
nothing,
eat.
there's no residence on the other side either. There's a laundromat.
Dry cleaners, right?
They're saying that you currently already have a smoker, but you're looking to change the location of it.
Yeah, we can increase our outdoor seating area. Our liquor license allows us to go back even farther, so we can have more outside tables and further distance from people. If we move the smoker to the other side, there's a parking space on the other side that's not being used. It's not metered. I've never seen anyone park in it, so.
I mean, I know somebody who parks in it, but.
Or bicycle person?
So, we were just asking if we can. It's also more proximate to our restaurant through the other side, so we can, to the kitchen rather, so we can just take food in and out.
Thank you. So then what would the the lease look like? Cause I see it's like empty or. Oh, I see.
Yeah, 0 is a number.
It was a very good number.
Do we need to add that in with whoever, like,
Um,
okay. Sure. All right. I didn't know, I didn't even see the blank, honestly. I didn't even see it.
So, okay.
Oh, yeah, I gotta find it.
There we go.
There we go, right here. Page 97. It's not in the resolution, though. Yeah, it's just in the. Okay.
Yeah, so it's like the license agreement is more around like ways to maintain the space and things like that. And we're calling it a license because it's in it's in the parking lot.
So
That-
license is generally what we call any sort of permission to use the city-owned space. So for
Mhm.
instance, all of our outdoor cafe agreements, our licenses, the agreement we have with Go Ice Cream for them to have their steps in their outdoor cafe in that alley. That's like, I believe there's a handful of others throughout the city as well.
And yeah, okay. And then, and for those, and like, yeah, when we do the cafe, yeah, we don't have them pay for that.
It's not without precedent, but it's also at the discretion.
That's oddly shaped. Is that being used?
Hmm?
Is it being used? I don't even think that spot is being used.
It's a 20-minute loading unloading zone.
Oh, well, yeah, yeah.
One particular employee in that area.
Okay. Why are you eyebrowing me? Okay. All
I
right.
was looking at him.
Oh, well, it felt like you were looking at me. I feel like that. No. Okay, so we have to give this number, or if it, because it's blank? Or can we just leave it blank and that means zero? I mean, we should.
Refer to the new one.
Yeah. I'm just asking, do we need an amendment to put that in there?
They need an amendment.
Mr. Barta put in,
Resolution. There's nothing in the resolution indicating price, so.
Oh, if council can set the price and just pass the resolution with the figure in the draft license agreement. You can put 0 or you can put another number in.
oh, so we don't have to actually make a formal amendment or motion, okay. All right,
Just add, put a number, put something in that blank. Then I think you also have to put something in the term.
oh, when it begins and ends, okay.
How long are the sidewalk cafes? Those are seasonal, right?
They're seasonal, yes.
Yeah, it says this one to continue till October, but just a blank of the date, so. Unless terminated earlier.
What's that?
So could we?
Yeah.
Can we just start and end it kind of like with the same dates that we have for the outdoor cafe?
This is a little different though, because. Sorry,
You
didn't
can
mean
use
to
us, no, you're not, stop talking.
Would this be an operation with people
what?
eating inside?
Oh. Oh.
Because, I mean, we're not talking
already
about,
out here.
the other ones are constrained because people are less likely to be sitting outside in October, but this isn't involving anybody sitting outside except for staff.
Was to permit that, oh. I was saying the move is to permit for more outdoor seating.
Oh, it specifically says within the agreement. So there's nothing that permits. any-
Well, no, I'm saying, when Mark had said that the moving of the smoker was to open up space for seating.
Right.
Within their property and not subject at all to this license.
Mhm.
Yes,
Well,
we-
I think,
we own the
are
outside.
we saying, are you gonna move the smoker back once the seating is then condensed again, or are you just gonna, that's gonna be a permanent location for this?
As long as you'll let us keep it there. That was the idea. I think we were looking at the Go Ice Cream license that had been signed, which I think rolls over year to year. And we were hoping for something similar. Till you decide to have us stop doing it, we would keep it that way.
My question is, are you gonna use the smoker in December?
Yes, we use a smoker. unit.
Okay, so this October date should then be,
Yeah, it shouldn't say October.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. It begins on. And it ends at the end of the year, so you can review annually.
Probably alter, now that I'm reading this in more detail, also provision number 12. Which has to do with the separate agreement for water and power. You don't mind just throwing that in?
Whether or not-
Definitely come out. This is definitely come out.
that's it. $5 million. It has to restore waterworks. Park, and you got until
Parking space.
October to do it. Right?
So you get everything.
Okay, so 12 needs to come out. Mr. Barr,
Is council agreeable to have it roll over?
Yes.
yeah.
Then what I suggest, make it subject to the approval of the city attorney, and I can add some language to that. But you do have to put something in the amount. And I'm not sure if the city loses any revenue with this.
We do not. All right, council members, put something in the amount.
You make it.
I move to, in that number for the, for the sum of blank per day, let's put $0.00.
Support.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. Discussion. Clerk Kalanga, please call the roll.
Councilmember King,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Tucson,
Yes.
Councilmember D Simmons,
Yes.
Councilmember J Simmons.
Yes.
Motion carries with 6 yes, 1 absence.
Awesome. Now the portion, subject to the approval of the attorney, do we have, that's already on there? Okay. All right, so I
And
feel like,
just a note to get rid of 12,
yeah, he,
rolling over and get rid of 12.
okay, so if there's nothing else, further discussion? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Tucson,
Yes.
Councilmember D Simmons,
Yes.
Councilmember J Simmons,
Yes.
Councilmember King.
Yes.
Motion carries with 6 yes, 1 absence.
All right, and as we move along here, thank you very much. Board and commission liaison reports, Police Advisory Commission.
We meet, it's this Thursday, correct? Yeah, this Thursday, and we just appointed Sasha.
All right, awesome. OHRC,
No update.
Arts Commission. Oh, yeah. Isn't he, Parks and Rec is Evan too, isn't it? All right. Sustainability.
We did meet, they elected officers and talked about different roles, including outreach and education. And they also, talked about a couple of other areas like, and I wish I meant to bring my notes from the meeting. They were sharing information about, or thinking about like the different presentations and folks that they wanted to bring, to the Sustainability Commission. I think they're looking to put together a calendar that they can share with folks ahead of time, and also share out in the, newsletter, the city's newsletter, so folks can be aware about their work. And then they are interested in helping to look at the ordinance around the pollinator, how we encourage pollinator lawns. And I don't know, Bonnie, I don't know if there's other things that jump out to you. Yeah, great. I got the greatest hits.
Awesome. Thank you. HDC,
Nothing to report.
Planning Commission,
They meet tomorrow.
ZBA. All right, SEMCOG,
Nothing to report.
Watts.
We have a meeting tomorrow. We didn't have one last month.
Oh, okay. Urban County, there was no meeting so far this month. I don't know if there's one coming up, but there was no meeting in June. DDA first left. I was not able to stay on the meeting. It took a little while for it to start, for us to have quorum, so I had to log off by the time they started. So I will send out anything that I find out from Chris if there is important information to share. Rutherford Pool.
This is an interesting situation. So they're open. I've been setting laps in the morning. It's wonderful to have people out and about and enjoying this resource within our city. There has been a question about SPARK grants and applications, and we have been deferring to Director Westler. There was a project for Prospect Park that was put in for the first round, and it's proposed to go in for the second round. It was possible that Rutherford Pool could also apply for this. There are limitations as to how, while the same entity could put in multiple applications, the question was how that would jeopardize the project. There's a limitation to how many applications you can put in for the Spark portion of their grants. So some late emails were whether I was going to bring this to this meeting and have their proposal go on, and I missed those. I was in meetings all day today, so I didn't bring it up to this. I think people would, there would be a lot of time to bring people up to speed on that, to have any kind of decision on it. So I haven't brought it forward. There are other parts. The pool has received grants from the DNR on 2 other occasions. And the word back from the DNR is that there are other avenues to get funding for these not included in the Spark. So at this point, I'm just letting everybody know that. I know that the board will be disappointed that this didn't come up through this, but I want to work with the board to maximize their ability to get funding elsewhere for this. We gave them $35,000 in the budget to match with these. There's a proposal into the county, which has $100,000. They've made $100,000 ask, but it's pretty clear that they're not going to get the whole amount there. So at this point, I think the total was 180,000. The last time I spoke was a different proposal for that they had ruled out because of the type of sealant on the surface of the pool. And so now it's down to about 180. So if we've got 35, they get some money from the county. And if we can find some money from the DNR and help them and facilitate those grants, then this could happen. But it's in desperate need of having this happen. And there's a lot of people that use this. So I'd just like to maximize the effort in helping the pool board get funding for this project. So.
Thank you. Bicentennial, that's Evan. Council proposed business. Councilman Houston.
Well, I have 3 things from the same resident, 3 issues rather. First issue being, this resident noticed 2 big dying trees in front of their home on 100 West Ainsworth Street. I don't know, Bonnie, I don't know if like past the sidewalk, is that city? All right, perfect. I'll let them know that. Second thing, actually, same resident at 100 West Ainsworth, is concerned about the overgrown patch of land to the right of their property, more towards, I want to say that's what Michigan Ave, yeah, Michigan Ave. And they said that they've witnessed drug activity in this overgrown space. I don't know if that's
Not in their house or on the.
in front. So in front, it goes their fence, the little joint where it meets the other residence fence, and then it's just a big overgrown patch of uncut land. I think that the other residents supposed to be taken care of. I don't know how that's supposed to be done, but just putting that out there. And then also the light pole L65A9859 has a branch growing up the side of it. And it's leaning on some kind of power lines or whatever lines are coming off of that. Gotcha. I'll let them know about that. L65A9859. Yep. All right, no problem. And that's it. That's all I got.
That was a lot. Thank you. All right. Councilmember Jason. I think so. All right. Mayor Pro Tem.
First item is, I've got a couple items. One is that I've been in contact with Monica Prince at the senior center, and they would like to have, she and Bruce came and spoke previously, and the follow-up to that is having Say Yes to Seniors come give a presentation at the next council meeting on July 11th. And so I've talked with Councilmember Sweet, and he will second that. And I've talked to the clerk about getting that on the agenda. So that will be coming up. And I'm clerk calling you, I'll send you the name of the person, and they've agreed to give the presentation slides ahead of time. So that'll be coming. This past weekend was a great celebration at Juneteenth. Was there for like 2.5, 3 hours. It was great. It was really cool. I got complaints from some residents that they were unable to access their homes because of the street closings, and that they were not given notification ahead of time that the street would be closed on Ferris. I wasn't really paying that much attention, but I didn't realize Ferris was going to be closed either. But that was problematic for folks in that block. So
Is all?
that's it.
Oh, okay. Councilmember D. Simmons.
Yeah, so a couple of things. One, I have been fighting with my printer. It might meet the end of office space, but which is, so I wasn't able to print up copies of this for you all, so I'll just send it on email. But this is a FAQ for legislators that a group, Michigan Tenants Assembly, put together, called "Why Repeal the Preemption on Rent Stabilization in Michigan." And so it is a 6-page document with hyperlinks. So the email probably would be better than the printout anyway. But it has a lot of information. And so I'll send this to you all over email because I'm interested in bringing forward a resolution in support of this effort and to show local desires to bring the conversation to our community, which to me, all we're asking for is actually the opportunity to bring the conversation to our community, as opposed to it being stopped at the state level. So I'll send this information as well as some more information from another organization that is, I think, joining this coalition called We the People Michigan too. So you'll see these in your emails. And then also just wanted to bring forward ongoing challenges, folks talking about road safety. So just got one. This one is in particular looking at that Cross Street Adams area, which I know is hard, like as a biker trying to, if I want to go downtown, trying to get over, because there's that slip lane, there's all the cars, trying to get over. It's really hard to do anyway by the fire station museum. So anyway, so this person lives right over there and says that they're like, they probably see an accident next to their home 2 to 3 times per week, with about once a month having a car in their yard that tears up the area. So I'm like, that's pretty major. And obviously we know that cars can, their concern is also a car can come into their house. And also that because it always is going over the sidewalks, obviously it's a danger for the pedestrians as well. And so they do suggest a couple of kind of short-term solutions, such as making it clear that it's not a 4-way stop. So adding some signage to the stop signs there, as well as having signs that that it's a 1-way on Cross. Although, is that going to change in the future? I don't know. Anyway, Is that the part that changes there? I don't know. I just anyway, but just to make sure that it's clear, because they say that you know, they're always seeing people either stopping when they shouldn't be stopping or not stopping, and people think that they're stopping or turning the wrong way on Cross at that intersection. So I can send those specific things to you, Bonnie. I don't know. In terms of seeing some of those pieces. They also suggest that part of the issue is also parking lots or parking spots that's on the street that make it really hard, like for visibility. And so I know that's a bigger question too, because it's kind of, you know, how is there ways to increase visibility with those parking spots still being there, or what the process would be if we need to remove those parking spots in order to increase visibility. And I know this came up before with a spot that was, I'm trying to remember, somebody had come, was that the Ainsworth, was the, were on the parking too? Although I don't know if those are Ferris. And I don't know. So anyway, I don't remember exactly how we dealt with that, or if it would be different because it's residential parking versus paid parking or not. It's not paid parking on Cross. Okay. Well, then that's great. But anyway, so I can forward that to see like what kind of specifics we can do, since they put a lot of specific ideas, but just one of the ones I got this week. I'm like, oh, okay. So I wanted to share that. And then the other thing I wanted to share is just an appreciation for a group of residents in Ward 3 who are meeting to put together or to share out some kind of fun communications, kind of neighborhood level communications plans, and things that they're working to do in those areas. So I'll make sure to share that out with others in case other folks are interested in trying to do some of, you know, whatever they're putting together. So just appreciation that they're kind of stepping into this and kind of trying to do something, and they shared something and I said, oh, other people are thinking about this too. So now there's a group of 4 of them working on it. So thank you.
I'm just question about the where this person lives. I'm trying to visualize where
They say they're in the historic house that's across the street. It's I think a white and black house, historic white brick home across the street from Gottberger.
Okay. Across the street from them. And they're getting people in their yard because of this slip lane?
No, I don't know that I wasn't saying, I was just naming the slip lane as being an issue.
Oh, okay, that's right.
Yeah, they didn't say anything about it. I think it's just part of what there's that increased traffic and that people speed there. It's just one of the many, probably 100 places where people speed in the city.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those places I know, because when I try to cross there on a bike, it's pretty impossible. So I have to kind of go up and then try to go across that way. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
Adams and Washington and Cross are like impossible.
Yeah. So anyway.
Thank you. Councilmember King?
I just have a few things. I was in a meeting and the residents were wondering about speed bumps on Monroe. Brian Jones Chance was in that meeting and he said he think it was passed last year. So
What do you mean? Like
to get speed bumps on Monroe.
Monroe Street?
That's what he stated. He said he put it in and he believes it was passed.
I don't know about that. The last thing that when former council member was to put speed bumps to continue down 7th Ave. That's the last thing that we talked about that we passed, and they did go out and do that pretty expeditiously. I have no recollection of a Monroe Street request.
So I guess I would follow up with Bonnie.
Yeah, 'cause I'm
regarding
like,
that.
unless he talked to her directly, I never heard that.
Steve Thompson, Monroe.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's, yeah.
So you did get one a year ago?
No, I don't know about that, but as far as being
Okay, well, I know the residents on that street, they are pretty interested in having, they remember getting signatures, and Brian Jones Chance thought that it was approved. So they are interested in having speed bumps on Monroe. They also were inquiring about the gym shoes on the wires. Who handles that? Okay. And
I'm sorry, so if we identified like where they were, could we reach out to who those folks are?
Yeah, generally we start with
okay. On Jefferson and Watland, these are some of the same residents. They were complaining about some properties. I don't have the addresses, Bonnie, but I will get them to you by tomorrow. Properties not being maintained, which is causing more animals to be in their yard. And they said they have been having a lot of issues with that. And they are older residents.
Code enforcement.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not saying the streets, but those streets, yeah, especially Watland. Lastly,
Yeah, a specific block. of block.
well, Watland and is it First? I don't know. I actually forgot my notebook at home, but I can give that information when I get home or in the morning, whatever works best.
Okay, send it to me.
Okay, will do. And lastly, I just want to celebrate the Juneteenth event. I think it was a beautiful event. I was able to go and I enjoyed seeing the city out, and it was just a joyous time. I am always bummed that I can't attend as much as I wanted to, but the time that I did spend there, I really enjoyed myself and the food.
Always the food. Thank you. Okay, I think it's my turn. So yeah, I guess I'll start there. I mean, this last weekend, the Juneteenth celebration, I was able to attend like a portion of all 3 days and majority of the day on Saturday. And it really was just very well done. So many people were out and engaged, really great vendors and just folks, fellowshipping together is always a beautiful sight, within the community. But and also I want to really lift up that, our first responders were very present and, interactive with our community. And that was police, that was fire, out there, not only doing, I'm sorry.
Huron Valley.
Oh, Huron Valley EMS, I'm sorry, and EMS, yes. Not only, doing their actual job, but doing the job that I want to see them do, right? Which is the engagement piece with folks. I saw police officers playing basketball with kids, Friday before the first Juneteenth kickoff event, there was the 3-on-3 basketball at Magic Square that was hosted. I believe Ozone House was like the primary host for that. And it was just very well attended. And again, like just good, clean fun and lots of young people out, just having a good time on a Friday, in community. I just think it's really nice. It's just really nice to not only see it myself, but see it depicted from other folks, from residents, if, just on social media, folks who are excited to share, photos and videos and imagery of, our police, our fire, and EMS also contributing, to the fun. And so that was great. So also thank you to Chief Moore. You were present pretty much every single day for the weekend of all these events, and even coached, I think, at the 3-on-3 tournament. And then of course the week prior, same thing. And we even heard, praise for not just us, then also including the sheriff's department also participated to support a little bit for Spark in the Park. And again, really good feedback around just collaboration and just peacekeeping and support for those events over these last 2 weeks. There have been so many things going on in the community, so many that I don't think there's enough time in the day for any of us to attend all of them, but I'm really happy to see so many things going on out and about. I wrote down something else. Also, was that Friday morning? Was that Friday morning too? man, it was a lot of events. So Friday morning, Councilmember King and I were able to attend EMU Engages Elected Officials Day, or where they welcomed elected officials from across the county to EMU and provided guided tours to particular areas that people have not necessarily been able to see or have been unaware of. They talked about all the work that all of these departments on campus are doing to engage the community and partner with the community. And it was nice to be from IPSI in the room with all these other elected officials from across the county who may not know about all the things that are happening at EMU, but also how interconnected it is with the city. I mean, a lot of the things they were talking about, there are direct partnerships with the city of Ypsilanti in some form or fashion, or our public schools. And that is really empowering, honestly, to be in a space where we're being spoken about in a positive light, rather than always, you know, the redheaded stepchild, honestly, of our neighbor. We are doing amazing things in partnership with, you know, many entities, and EMU is a big part of that. And so again, my hope has always been to continue to strengthen our relationship and, you know, and continue to build on that. And I think that Friday showed that we are, you know, we're getting there. We're doing a lot, and there's always more to be done, of course. And then lastly, some administrative business. In light of our lateness on doing evaluations last year, I would like us to potentially, and I was just talking to Councilmember Simmons about sending out the evaluation document to all of council so that folks can look at it, review it, and if there are things that we want to talk about to keep the same, to change, or whatever, so that we can actually do this on time this year. So getting the ball rolling on reviewing our documentation and preparing to then start these evaluations in a timely fashion so that we are not delayed as we were last year. So again, there's no real action, just putting it out there that I'm gonna ask that that be sent out so we can start to get things in motion. Sure, by the week's end is fine. That's fine, perfect, thank you. Anything else? There's also some continued Juneteenth celebrations happening this weekend, one at WCC on Saturday, that I think many of us will likely be attending, along with just, again, still a plethora of things. It's the summer, y'all. It's summertime. All the events are happening. So I'm very excited. This is a good time in the community when the weather's nice and there's lots of fun, positive things to do. All right, that's all for me, City Manager. Oh, is there a question?
I did say, was it in the email? You said an event for Juneteenth this weekend?
At WCC?
Yeah, I said, was it in the email? I'm asking, was it an email saying, because I didn't see it.
You know what? No, I didn't get it in an email. I was at a meeting at EMU and with Caroline. That's who told me.
Oh, no, just because you said, I think other council members are going.
I saw some head nods, so I.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know.
Okay.
I don't know for real. I saw.
Yeah, I just didn't have the
Yeah.
information on it. That's why.
Oh, yeah. So I saw head nods. I don't
Okay.
actually know who else is going.
Okay.
We're WCC students, so we know about it. Because we got, yeah. we got
Oh,
emails
okay. Because I sorry, I was just going off the head nods.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. City Manager.
Thank you. I just want to give kudos to YPD. And I think the fire department, Washington County, the collaboration that they had for the Spark in the Park event. I was just very excited and happy with how it turned out. And so I just want to give kudos to our chief, who's established a plan of action for each event. And that's something we haven't had in the past, so that we know where people will be staged, we know exactly what will be going on and how it will be, staffed. So I really do appreciate that. The other thing is, I want to give hats off to the committee for the Juneteenth celebration. Again, I like the mayor and Steve and Michelle, those who I saw. I agree that it was an excellent event where it brought out a lot of community residents as well as visitors. A lot of visitors travel to attend our Juneteenth events. So I want to give hats off to Survivor Speak and all of those that work with Survivor Speak, in particular Puffer Reds, Converse, the Bank of Ann Arbor, all of the sponsors that came together to pull this off. So I'm excited. I want to say thank you on behalf of the city. There were no incidents. I always love when we don't have incidents. And what was my other? Oh, I'd like to encourage you to please look at your emails because I'm going to be sending out a lot of things regarding just maybe internal things going on or internal changes so that you know ahead of time and you know how to respond to questions that you may get from the community. And then also just to answer your questions. And that's all I have tonight.
You. All right, communications. Oh, July 11th, we'll have a discussion regarding boards and commissions. Okay, this is our second opportunity for public comment. If anyone in the audience would like to speak to us, feel free. You have 3 minutes.
Oh, my name is Erin Boltema. I'm one of the newly appointed members for the CBA committee. So so I just wanted to, I was here last week in person for that meeting and just expressed I'm super interested in the project. I live in Ypsi. I'm really interested in wanting to get more involved in my community. And so that's a big, the housing issue is something really important to me. And then being involved in the Ypsi community is important. So, this was my first full city council meeting and I just sat through the whole thing because it's interesting to me just to see how all this works. I mean, every little piece was no, but let's be real. But it's just interesting to me to see how it all works and how it all comes together. And I've just seen really cool things happening in Ypsi lately and just it makes me excited. So I'm excited to be a part of everything.
Thank you so much for volunteering your time. We're happy to have you. All right, is anyone online?
If anyone currently participating online would like to make comment, please raise your hand now. No hands are raised, council.
Thank you. Well, we'll close public comment. I don't have any other remarks other than, Mr. Barr.
Yes, I've got my grouch hat on now.
Uh-oh.
Please remember on email, you can send and take emails, but do not discuss city council business leading to a decision on email. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. That's not grouchy. That's important information. Keep us in line. All right, seeing none.
Resolution number 2023-115, resolved by the council of the city of Ypsilanti that the city council meeting be adjourned on call by the mayor or 3 members of council.
3
I
members.
And I support this.
Yeah. Been like that for a while, but don't worry.
Darn, you'd be like, wait a minute. What? I'll just adjourn the meeting. Adjourn.
9 o'clock.
I had no idea.